South Dakota getting it from both sides today. A tornado hit the small town of Delmont on the eastern side of the state, and more than a foot of snow is blanketing the Black Hills to the west. Correspondent Rick Williams reports from Sioux Falls on the tornado.
There is reports of damage and injuries in south-central South Dakota. Emergency responders are in the process of getting to the scene of the damage.
Severe weather from Texas to the Dakotas this afternoon. A bit of good weather news back east, where the U.S. Hurricane Center says Tropical Storm Ana, churning off the Carolinas, has weakened now to a depression. Terrorist threats resulting in a boost of security levels at U.S. military bases here at home, and John Miller, working counterterrorism for the New York Police Department, tells ABC's This Week.
When they turn up the warnings a little bit, it's usually because the traffic and the calls for violence have been turned up at the same time, and we usually get a pretty good result from that.
Court appearances for 3 suspects in the shooting deaths of 2 Hattiesburg police officers tomorrow. Cuban President Raul Castro paid a call today on Pope Francis at the Vatican. Correspondent Ben Wiedemann is in Rome.
This meeting, 55 minutes, is a pretty long meeting with Pope Francis, who usually gets down to business quite quickly. They apparently met one-on-one. Nobody else was in the room. They spoke in their native language, Spanish. Afterwards, they exchanged gifts. Now, we don't know exactly what they talked about, but it's understood that the Cuban leader probably did thank Pope Francis for his role in mediating between the United States and Cuba, which, of course, has resulted in this diplomatic thaw.
USA Today reports Castro said after the meeting he was so impressed with the Pope that, quote, "I will go back to praying and go back to church, and I'm not joking." A supersized Mother's Day for marine biologists at the New England Aquarium. 17 new North Atlantic right whale calves have been born. They're one of the most endangered whale populations on the planet. I'm Michael Toscano.
Johnny wants to be a performer, and everybody knows school costs money. Johnny wants to know what he has to do to become a performer. Plus, he needs experience before he decides to spend the money for school. Johnny's confused. He has no one to talk to about his choices. He then hears an ad on the radio about Method Arts Academy, where he can perform, network, train, and find a place to prepare for school. Johnny has found a place to expand his talents to make his decision and also increase his resume. Now, let's explain how Johnny got signed up. He went online to method8inc.com and clicked on register. They called him back, asked him what his vision was, then found a place for him to perform. Whether it's theater, music, or movies, as long as Johnny is willing, method8inc.com is able. And that's the story of how Johnny became a performer through Method 8 Arts Academy.
Okay, don't freak out if you're driving in your Mitsubishi right now, but the company may be recalling your car. Mitsubishi recalling more than 130,000 cars because of 2 separate issues that could lead to reduced visibility for drivers and raise the risk of a crash. John Trout has specifics.
The cars affected include Lancer model years 2009 to 2011, Lancer Sportback model years 2010 and 2011, Lancer Evolution model years 2010 and 2011, and the Outlander Sport model year 2011. About 53,400 cars are affected by the other recall. Mitsubishi says headlights, taillights, and windshield wipers may not work. The affected cars include Lancer model years 2009 and 2010, Outlander model years 2009 and 2010, Evolution model year 2010, and Sportback model year 2010.
The repairs, of course, will be free. I'm Michael Toscano.
Have you ever thought about publishing a book, but just didn't know how to do it? Well, at Method 8, we try to make publishing simple. You ask questions, we give you answers. You want a book? We find the right option for you to publish. When you need advice about getting your methods out to the world, Method 8 is the place to call. Register today at method8inc.com, where we make ideas seem simple.
This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo. All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter.
No fear, fellow citizens. The mediator is here.
All doctors to the ER. All nurses to the nurses station. Code blue 305. 10-4 engine, 5 engine, 3 is en route. Shots fired, shots fired. Officer down. I repeat, officer down. 911, what's your emergency? Backup is en route.
Evacuations continue tonight in Maribel.
Apartments, you can see this evacuation notice on one door.
Rolling. Motion. Roll sound. And action.
Hello, 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 Ohioans, Pennsylvanians, Americans. Welcome to the Mediator with Brian West. I am sparkless today. She had to attend an event with her mother on Mother's Day. I have my friend Michele. Michele, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent, excellent. We are going to talk about Michele's book today, I Believe in You, and she is a mother of how many, Michele? 3?
I have 3 children.
Excellent, excellent. We are talking about your daughter today, and we're talking about you and the path that it takes to be a good mother in this new age of the 21st century. The challenges that we see, the ability to believe in a higher power that will guide us through our challenging situations. Now, Michele, you wrote a book. It's called I Believe in You, and it's a mother and daughter's special journey. Now, your daughter, she's got, I believe it's dyspraxia. Am I correct?
You're right. Yeah, she has dyspraxia and a disorder called sensory processing disorder, or SPD, as we refer to it later in the book.
Oh, wow. And so you in the book, you talk about the challenges that you had to face, the ability to have to raise a child who you did not at that particular time frame. You couldn't understand what was going on. I think it's natural human nature to want to fix a problem, especially when they see it happening to someone they love. So tell us about the experience that you had to go through in the beginning, like you talk about in the book.
Well, early on in Elizabeth's life, of course, we had our first daughter, and, she was just off the charts and everything, that she did. It was ahead of schedule, and, you think, oh, this is, nice, right? And then along comes Elizabeth, and, she, hindsight's 20/20, and you can clearly see the difficulties were from birth.
Yeah.
But you don't know what it is because you haven't experienced anything like this. And, you're left just in a little state of denial at first because, of course, you can think, tomorrow will be better, this is okay, she's tired, she's hungry, any myriad of excuses why. And then you start to really have reality set in as we entered around her second birthday, when we realized, how many markers she hadn't hit yet in terms of, motor development and speech. So we had a lot of challenges to begin with, and to not know is very frightening because everybody's who has children, they're just advancing, and yours is struggling.
Now you say, I think you talk about how you had a lot of support from friends. I think you talked about a woman named Mary. What's the significance of Mary in your story?
Well, Mary is the therapist who is. We've had a lot of therapists in Elizabeth's life, but Mary, we like to call her our quarterback because she is the one that we sought help around 2.5 years old. We brought Elizabeth to Mary for the sensory issues, which is the SPD, and for the dyspraxia issues. And Mary was taking over and really guided us just on exercises and understanding the child and Elizabeth, and just helping us step by step. So since 2.5 years old to currency, Mary is still in our life with Elizabeth.
And I think that's the amazing thing about the journey and what I got out of the story, because I think most people take advantage of life and they don't understand how valuable it is to have all things. Like, you've got your arms, you've got your limbs, and some people are fully functional, and I think sometimes we take advantage of that. So now you've raised her. How old is she now?
Elizabeth's 17, soon to be 18.
Wow, 17, and she just had her prom and things like that, and you've been there and you're taking the picture. So now that you see that she's moving along, have you seen a lot of improvements in her life over the years?
Yeah, we really, very, very definitely much. If I look over my shoulder at where we started to where we are, absolutely. Just definitely. Even from just not talking till she was 5 to, talking your ear off currently, just everything, confidence, maturity, abilities, not, and the thing I think everyone who's listening might want to know is, the disorders she has, they don't go away though. You work with them and you grow and you learn how to put the supports in place to continue her growth. You have to know that, those are going to be part of her. Mm-hmm. Because Elizabeth is those components, that's who she is. And the thing is with that, as you look over your shoulder and you take you can take that moment to really realize at certain points in time, I will take a look over and say, wow, yeah, we really have come pretty far for her.
And for people who don't know out there what dyspraxia is, it's a cognitive disease that affects the stem of the brain to where the brain is not fully communicating as you have those like shock waves, but think in the spine where the brain, the brain is giving the body communication. So people always wonder, what's the symptoms? Some of the symptoms are, I believe, is clumsiness when a child falls over or things like that.
Yeah, clumsy child syndrome. Well, an easy way to learn what it is would be it's a motor planning disorder. So every task you do, from writing to cutting to jumping to dressing to any motor skill, riding your bike. Yeah. All of that takes motor planning, motor skills. And in dyspraxic children, and every child's different, but in dyspraxic children, those skills, those motor planning skills are affected, as are speech, because you use your muscles to talk. And the thing is, the hidden part of dyspraxia, which not a lot of people recognize maybe, is it does affect thinking, processing information, the ability to sequence, steps to do a task, the ability to remember short-term things. So you have a lot of challenges with dyspraxic kids, and some kids have a fine motor problem like writing. Others can have clumsiness playing a sport. Elizabeth happens to be globally dyspraxic, which means she has it all.
Oh, wow. Now, in the book, you talk about the control of your daughter's health, and you say how that bothered you, like you would go to, especially when you had to get the tubes in her ears and things like that. And you talk about the control, and how, and I can vouch for this because I've been in the hospital before to where you have to put it in where you think the doctors have all the answers, but sometimes you just have to let God guide you. So talk about that a little bit. What does that mean when you feel like you lose control of your child's life?
When you mean when she was getting her tubes? You mean?
I mean, just pretty much throughout the whole process. I mean, it seems like
I think that's you actually do hit on a good point, to be honest. When I do think of control, because I have been accused a few times of being controlling of Elizabeth, but I'm kidding. But no, I think it's true. You do have to. You hope that when you explain your child who has these special needs to people who will be taking care of her or working with her, that you advocate properly and you teach them what she needs, how she works, so that they can do for her when you're not in the presence of your child. And it is tough to hand the baton, as it were, to someone and hope that they're going to do that. And it's a learning process to let go. And it is very difficult because you're careful with your children, you treasure them, and it's tough when one can't speak for herself or
I think the reason why I asked that, Michele, is because when I had a problem when I was serving for this country. I don't want to bring it up too much, but my mother, and I never understood what it's like to be a mother, and this is Mother's Day, so we can kind of sympathize together. And my mother was so distraught, and that's what I think, and this is the amazing thing about my story. I don't want to get too much into it, but I was in Puerto Rico, and I'll never forget, I got injured on the ship, and the first thing I said, I was in the bed, and they said, well, Brian, your mother's on the phone. And I jumped up. It was like, I don't want her to worry. Because I think, and I think I think my mother, she was I think there's like a fear in there. Were you afraid at that particular, those moments at the beginning?
Oh yeah, definitely. You mean early on? Absolutely, because you don't know, and and then you look around, and it appears no one else knew either, for a while, and you are afraid because this child's struggling. This child showed, sadness and fear and crying, and there is something happening, and you just don't know, and you would do anything. You would move any mountain to find that answer to help them, and I think that the thing is, you are fearful because this is a life. I mean, you have lived a life. I've lived whatever portion of my life yet, and she needs to live and have a life, and that was exactly what motivated us constantly for her.
And you stayed by her side. Like, yeah, that's what I like about it. And even in my situation, like I said, I was a grown man, and I seen my mother. They didn't have a lot of money, and they drove down to Virginia to visit me in the hospital. And the process of motherhood is so amazing. It's like, and I think men have a hard time understanding it because I couldn't comprehend it at that particular time. I still have a hard time comprehending the care of a mother when you're a grown man and things like that. Now, one question I did have for you is, your husband is a doctor and you are an RN, and you guys have experience with medicine. So, how did that get into the mix in the nurturing of your child when the doctors were trying to prescribe and things like that?
Well, to be honest, I was a school nurse, and Elizabeth was unlike any child that I had come across. And my husband is internal medicine physician, so he has a little old, population that's not in the young years, toddlers and babies and such. And so we had experience, but we didn't know anything at all.
Yeah.
And it was out of our realm. And so we then became very thirsty to learn about Elizabeth.
And that's amazing.
We were ready, because you watch this child struggle and you're thinking, if someone tells you to try this, you're going to be very willing to, try to understand it, read about it, and then determine. But open as anything to hearing.
So, do you have confidence in the medical field? I mean, because I remember when I had my situation and it was a breakdown. I had to be prescribed certain medicines, and I had to. One of the medications that they had me on, it was making me bigger, and I was starting to grow things. And one night I actually talked to the doctor. I said, man, I can't. I said, you have to give me something else. I said, I can't take this medicine. So did you have those situations when you were in the process?
To be honest with you, the way Elizabeth's therapies worked, it was more of in a therapy setting. So when they prescribed things for her to try and do, we were not on medication per se for Elizabeth, but we were on definite regimes of sensory diet, which is when, well, I can explain that later, but whatever they had told us to do, we were willing to do. And you do have a certain level of trust in them, for what they're doing. And the people who understand the disorders that we had and have are the ones that I would trust 100% completely in asking questions for and about Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. I see the picture of her, and she looks very she looks like she's matured. And I was so into the book because when I was growing up, my sister had some some functions. She had to go to a speech therapist. She was a slow developer, and she had to get tubes in her ear. So as I was reading, I was seeing the visions of when we were kids, and I used to have to. I was always have to be the big brother, and and she got an amazing thing about it was she grew, and she's off with her life now, and she's doing a phenomenal job. And I think one of the things that concerned me was the fact that you watch people who have all their cognitive functions, and it's almost like they can't seem to cope with life, and you watch people with who they consider special or have certain dysfunctions and things like that, and these people seem to be some of the sweetest, and they
absolutely.
And I don't think, to me, that they're disabled. I think it's a gift. Do you consider your?
I do.
Isn't that something?
I do. I think the gift of Elizabeth, and it's nice that you'd bring that up because I actually just posted a vlog on my website about the gift of Elizabeth. I think these children, and I'll speak only for Elizabeth, but I do see it in a lot of the kids that I've seen and are with, but Elizabeth is definitely one of the most empathic, sweet, kind, and generally happy child, and she can look past the bad stuff that maybe you or I would say, oh, here we go.
Isn't that something?
It's gorgeous because, she'll say, I really like people. And she'll talk and she'll chat with. She just is that person. And I'll tell you what, if you boil down life from all the stuff that we focus and we do and all the things, and sometimes take that minute and think, I shouldn't really have worried about that. Elizabeth teaches you that. And in this course of the life with her, her gifts have been in that realm for us. Teaching you that, the little things in life are just the hugest treasures. And we were never we always had in our hearts those ideas. That's how we've lived forever. But Elizabeth has brought those out times 100 in everybody.
And you know what amazes me, Miss Gianetti, is sometimes, when I went through what I had to go through, and I seen the other side. I call it when you face the balance in life, where you feel like life is about to end, and you start to realize how precious things are. I'll never forget the moments I had to sit in that hospital. I looked out the window constantly and just watched all of the things, and I don't know what happened at that particular time. I don't know everything, all the details, but in my mind, I felt like I was okay. But I think you start to realize how precious life is, and I see things where people they take advantage of people. They feel like, especially people who they consider nice. Now your daughter, she has a gift where she sees the positive things in life, and I think you probably have a lot to do with that. So when you look at that, how does that make you feel as a mom to be able to, you're raising an angel? So is that you know what I'm saying? Do you feel like when that's an honor? So when I see mothers, I'm like, what does that make you feel like when you, at that particular time in that moment, you didn't know what was going to happen, you were afraid, and now you see her growing up, and do you sit back and do you cry sometimes?
For her, and yeah, absolutely. Oh, sure.
Tell us about the role that your husband plays in the nurturing of your child.
Oh, yeah. Well, when the way that it has been is I've been home, blessed to be home with my kids. And so therefore, we could devote the time we needed to Elizabeth's therapies and her work. And when I would be tired or, my patience was at its end, John is always there to be that support for me and be that support for my time that I need. And he would be there for Elizabeth and, just unconditional support and love for her. And he's just that way for all of us. That's who he is, just for our family.
And you talk about, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, so he would be the one that would take Elizabeth for a walk when, she was stressed or when we needed a break and, to just talk through hours with me on things. And
that's amazing. Now she has a sister, and I think you talk about in the book how when she had the brother, she started to talk and she started to communicate a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about that.
Did. I think, when we had, she has a sister who's 3 or 2.5 years older, and then she has Michael, who is 8 years younger, and Michael sort of was the impetus to Elizabeth to be the big sister role, and Elizabeth took to that quite well. It was guiding Michael, talking, reading to Michael, and it was, at some points in time, it was a little nerve-wracking to wonder how she would adjust to not being the baby anymore and to being this big sister, but she just took to it. She loves having a little brother.
Yeah.
And loves kind of being that role for him. And, to be honest, Michael is extremely loving and supportive of his sister, which is a great thing. He knows when she needs help with something. He knows when he can speak for her if she can't. Because, there are still times when things will be hard for Elizabeth, and, her siblings are there for her, which is a great thing.
Now, you talk about your relationship with God in the process. It sounds like you were raised Catholic and things like that. Mm-hmm. How did your spirituality come into the nurturing process? How did that? I think what you had hit on before was the control thing. When you mentioned control, that's why I joked about being in control. Because I think initially at the early years of Elizabeth, prior to that one very, very special, which I write about, that prayer service. Yeah, I'd heard about that. That was a good way to put it, in the book.
Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I think I was very much wanting to figure out what's what and to be in control and to schedule the appointments and to plan the therapies. And I just wanted to make sure we did every single thing we could. And then as you learn, you can see it's working, but it isn't on your time frame and it isn't on your strength. And it's definitely God's plan, and things happen when they're supposed to happen. I know sometimes people get tired of that phraseology, but I do firmly believe that they happen when they're supposed to.
I think so. I really think so.
And there's a gift in everything that happens. You have to look for that gift. It could be a bad something, but there's going to be something good that comes from it. And isn't that what we're taught, right? And so I think we look at it that way, and you just say the prayers you need to say to get through some tough days, but ultimately it isn't our time frame. So everything that Elizabeth's done, I have to just be grateful and thankful.
Now, Michele, some people believe that, because you wrote a book about it, some people believe that sometimes that, spirituality, like angels, come to us and gives us the ability to write what's on our conscious mind. Now, you wrote this book. Tell us about why you wrote it, and do you feel like somebody had came into you to write? Because somebody may pick up this book just like I did and read it, and they may understand that. What is dyspraxia? They may be able to save people's lives. You don't know. Some doctor may pick it up. Oh, go ahead.
The reason I wrote the book was because at the points in time that we've done everything up until the book covers the first 11 years of our life. So obviously that was a time of the denial and the searching and the finding of the therapy and doing, and it was a very hard hunk of time. And a lot of people would ask, what does she have and how do you do? And Elizabeth came up to me right before I wrote the book and said, Mommy, nobody understands me. Yeah. And I thought, how wonderful to give her this gift, right? I mean, this would be an explanation of her life there. You can read this book, you will understand where we started, you'll understand Elizabeth. And then I wanted to help as the other people who could be struggling. Maybe they have a 2-year-old and they just don't know, and they could use this and the information, because there's quite a lot of information in the book.
Oh, yes, there is.
And then I wanted to give hope to the families that you can make a difference, because, this was a journey, and we're still on the journey. We're not done, and can help the people who raise awareness of the disorders, because even though once you say them and describe them, people can understand them, but overall awareness needs to be raised for the disorders.
Now, I'm a grown man, and I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened when I wrote the book. I'm not gonna lie to you, Michele. At the end of the book, they say you have an epiphany moment sometimes in life, and I actually shed some tears. I shed some tears, and I because it every time I always think I'm getting ahead and I got control of things in my life, there's always something that brings me back to reality. And when I read your story and I saw the patterns, where you go through, you get through and it's like that brick wall was right there, and I'm like, man, if she could do it, I think I could face things like that. Because sometimes I think men, we forget what it's like to be the nurturer in the family. So so how do you feel about that role between where there's a thin line? Was your husband, did he ever did you see doubt in his eyes sometimes?
I definitely think that being in the profession that John's in, it's clinical, and it's studied in books, and it's there, you know what to prescribe, and you have a plan of care. Elizabeth's disorders don't clearly fall into a text. Well, they fall into textbook, but the care and the plan and the treatment are all, different to each child. And yeah, there were times when I would think we're going to try this, and John and I would talk it through, and I would be, 100,000% gung-ho, and he would always be the one to kind of taper back and say, let's give this a try, and then we'll see what happens, and I think it was always just to kind of temper back my zeal to charge forward, in that way.
Well, everybody, you're listening to The Media with Brian West and Alicia Sparks. Alicia is attending an event with her mother today. It is Mother's Day, so I'll give her a break. We are talking to Michele Gianetti, and she is talking about her book, I Believe in You, a mother and daughter story about a special journey. If you want to donate to the program, you can go to method8inc.com. Again, that's method, the number 8inc.com, and donate to the program. We use any type of funds to go towards our research and things like that for our guests. So Michele, now we're getting to the next half of the program. I'm going to step it up a notch a little bit. I want to get into the medical field real quick, and I also want to ask you about that butterfly you have in the book. But first of all, tell us some of because since you're an RN and your husband's a doctor, tell us, and you've had to experience medical work yourself. What are some of the pros and cons do you feel in the medical nurturing of people?
Wow, that's a good question.
Give us some of the pros and cons that you see day to day.
I'm not. You might have to ask me that. I'm not certain I'm going to answer correctly. You're talking outside of Elizabeth, of course.
I think no. I mean within, because the thing, I think the advantage that you have now. I'll give you my situation. When my mother saw what I was going through, she did not have experience in the medical field, so I can give my pros and cons as a patient. But you had to raise a child, and you had to see the pros and cons. Like, I see what I saw, and this is a good thing. I saw people who at times they wanted to give up on me, but they would not, because they believe in what they were doing. And I think that's a pro. So when you saw the doctors, and they showing compassion, trying to find ways, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Just tell us a little bit about how that worked out.
Okay, so the people, we've had, like I said, a number of therapists, and so if I had to make the pro list, it would be the ones that really listen to you, listen to the parents, because we are obviously the ones are with our children all the time, so we do have that knowledge base. And I don't mean hear, I mean listen. We all hear, but, listening is an active thing.
Yeah.
And to really take your time, and to, ask questions. The people who ask questions, because you're a therapist, you could be the best one in the world, best physician in the world, but if you don't ask questions, you can't know everything about everything.
Yeah.
So to show the ability to ask a question is something that I love, because that shows you're willing to learn with us what's going on with our daughter. And the ones that can believe in and celebrate the little victories of the child. Those are just great qualities. The cons to the people would be the ones who, would be who are doing it and maybe don't have the belief in the child. I think that's a tough one. They'll go through the motions, but they don't have the bar set where I would set it, or maybe the other therapist would set it. And I think that belief in the child has to be critical to working with kids like Elizabeth.
And then
also...
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michele.
Well, also the really big thing, and I've learned it on our journey, is, initially I wanted to, quote, fix Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But the thing I've learned through the journey is that you don't fix the child, because if you're fixing them, it means they're broken. And she's not broken. She's just has these disorders, and you understand the child. So you never want to fix somebody, because that's a bad thing for Elizabeth to think that if my goal in life was to fix her, then she would understand that she's broken, and she's not. She's amazing, and I would want her to always know that we're working and we'll continue working. But that's where my thought is now. So pros and cons for me go along those lines.
Now, Michele, so like I said, this is always groundbreaking for me, because I don't think people understand the significance of somebody being there by your side when you're going through a medical situation. And you were there every step of the way with your child. And look how she's blossoming into a beautiful figure. And I've seen miracles. And this is why I believe in God so much, because I honestly believe when you're going through a situation, when I was in my situation, I would always hear this voice. And I don't know, and it's not anything crazy, like most people would think, but I was never pessimistic about it. I was always optimistic. And you could feel an inner voice telling you everything is going to be fine. Did you feel that voice?
I think where I felt the strongest, I wouldn't say voice maybe, but intuition, the deep belief of, was when Elizabeth was very, very young, and her eyes were just so incredibly bright and blue and focused. But the disorders of her dyspraxia and her sensory issues, they had her kind of trapped. And so as much as everybody wanted to say, this is what you have, and here's what we're going to try to do, I just looked in her eyes, and I knew, 100% knew that there was a child just full of life in there. And that was what drove me, and it was just looking, because you can see through into those eyes and just see a
He didn't have any doubt. He didn't have any doubt
at all. No.
And so now I gotta say that now, my grandfather, he had cancer, he had lung cancer, and he's been having a lot of health issues. And the first thing I told my mother is when we were going through this process, I said, Mom, I said, I don't have any doubt in my mind that Grandpa's going to be all right. You know, I said, he's going to be fine. And sometimes when it's almost like, I think people are searching for that belief. I stuck, and when I was there at the hospital with my grandfather, I think I watched him grow more and more because I was there. So do you think that we as people, when we come together, like, do you think the person who's in that body, do you think that's what makes us grow to get better? Like, is that the miracle that I'm looking for?
I think when you find those special people and you surround yourself with those special people, you can't help but pull good energy and good beliefs from them to the child. And, you know, you surround with positivity, you surround with the belief and a love of who that child is, not what you want them to be, but who they are. And then they see the belief in their eyes, like Elizabeth would see the belief in the therapists and the friends and people. And I think she knows we believe in her. I mean, that's it. And I think that does just help her believe in herself and grow from there.
So tell us, she's going to school and things like that. Tell us a little bit about now, the life now that she's 18 and 17. She just went to her prom, and you're starting to see her blossom into an adult. So tell us a little bit about what that feeling is like.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see what she does. Again, please understand, you know, Elizabeth will have supports in place because that's how we've learned how best to guide her. But she's doing very well. She wants to do things. She wants to try things. They had her special gym teacher just finished having the class, whoever wanted to run on the track team at our school, to train with the athletes and run in the home meet. Elizabeth was on the track team.
She was on the track team.
Yeah, she was on the track team. She and I exercised together. And she is working as a job. She has a job to help and with the support in place with the counselor at the YMCA in the summer. She helps. She has this, you know, so she has those. She loves typical high school things, typical teenage things. Nail polish, clothes, music, you know, that kind of stuff. She does very well. She's personable and funny, and I mean, she is a really wonderful child.
And that's good. So you're seeing the growth. You're seeing it. And it's amazing. And I told my mother, because when I went through my situation, I said it's funny how when I was born and I had to be an incubator. Like, I think you said your son had to be an incubator in the book. Mm-hmm. But I was an incubator, and it's funny how you could be there that moment and they're watching over you, and then when you grow up, they're the first two people around you. So I said, God has reasoning for everything. You know what I'm saying? So
that is true.
That is so true. So tell us about this butterfly in the book.
Okay, the butterfly in the book, you mentioned the spirituality. So the butterfly in the book is for my grandma, who, was a kid at heart her whole life.
Yeah.
A loving, wonderful lady. But she was a kid at heart, and she was one of out of all of us, because, you know, we're all in the trenches, our family, and we're just kind of getting through the days at this point. And my grandma was the one who reached Elizabeth first. You know, just in being a kid herself, she just allowed Elizabeth to be a kid back. And it was wonderful. You know, they connected beautifully. And Grandma loved butterflies.
Oh, wow.
When Grandma passed away, we would see these white butterflies everywhere when we were playing outside.
Yeah.
And I would always say, hey, there's Grandma, no, there's Grandma, and there's me. Well, we called her Mima. They called her Mima. But anyway, so the butterflies, so because of the bond with Elizabeth and the butterflies, the butterflies are on the book.
That is amazing. I'm reading, and I had this, I like that movie, I Am Legend. And I used to see, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie before, but it's supposed to be a scary movie, but it's not actually a scary movie, but it's actually got some meaning to it, some substance. And it's about this, Will Smith plays in it, and he ends up having to fight. Everybody's been killed. Most people have died because of a disease that spread. So his daughter tells him about this butterfly, and as he's finding a cure, that's why I thought your story was kind of significant. It was kind of like a phenomenon thing that kind of happened. And you're an RN and your husband's a doctor. Well, Will Smith was a doctor. He was in the military in the movie. And he has to find a cure to save humanity. And as he's going through his journey, you know, in the movie, he gets to a point to where he stops believing in God. And as these, as the zombies, the beings who have been put on this disease were fighting to get through the window, he sees this butterfly. And he's like, oh, my God, you know, my daughter, she loved butterflies. And that was the last thing he heard from her when he had seen her. I thought it was a pretty good movie. You could tell it was written out of passion. But yeah, you know, but when I was reading this, I say, wow, look at that. There's the butterfly, you know, and that's...
Isn't it? And there's a little more to the butterfly story. That was the intent in the book, but, you know, my dad, my wonderful dad, passed away a year ago in May. So actually a year this past Thursday. And Elizabeth, he'd been chronically ill and then acutely ill. And as he was, you know, being very, very ill, sick, Elizabeth was very close to my dad. And she called him Poppy. And we were very sad at the time. And she looked at me and she said, don't worry, Mommy, Poppy's going to the butterflies in heaven. They're waiting for him. And I remember thinking, you know, I remember one physician, I guess he had a near-death experience, and the first thing he said was the butterflies were in heaven when he visited and he was brought back. And I remember reading that. Elizabeth didn't, of course, read the articles in Newsweek, but I did. And I remember her telling me this. And I remember just looking in her eyes, and she was so peaceful about where my dad was going and what was waiting for him. And, you know, I think to myself, there's the butterfly on the book years before this happened, yet the reference from Elizabeth was made. And when he passed away, she said the butterflies are with him. And she was the comfort to me at that time, which was pretty wonderful.
And you know what was humbling about the situation is I think there is a part in the book where you say there was you thought about the vaccinations and you thought that had a lot to do with it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think the whole world now had focused on vaccines. You know, there's so many strong opinions on to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. And clearly Elizabeth had her disorders from birth. So I can't say that vaccines did anything to contribute to her having these disorders. I can say that putting in maybe all of them in the one day, because as you know, they dose, you know, several vaccines at a visit. And I just have always thought that maybe the dosage of them and when at the time they were thimerosal-based vaccines, and I think that, you know, not that again it would have created, it just was something else that her system had to have in it that maybe would have been better to space them out. You know, we have a different schedule for Michael's immunizations. That would be our son.
Yeah.
When he had it, we vaccinated every vaccine he needed, but we just were able to do them in a little bit of a stretched out way and give his body time to adjust. So I think it's just doing what's best for your child and having that talk with your doctor to just say, if you're uncomfortable with how many at a day, you can ask the questions that make you feel comfortable.
Yeah, you say you had the flu when you said you had the flu and you were you were afraid of taking certain things. Tell us a little bit about what you talk about that in the book a little bit. What happened?
Well, I think anybody, when you're expecting, you do try to live the cleanest life possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had the flu around 10 weeks gestation. And a fever of about 101, and it stayed for a while. And you know, even as I was feeling ill, I was thinking, gee, you just wonder what it did to how the baby would be in an environment when you're ill at that young of a time, because first trimester is. So that was my concern, and to take anything, I just would be afraid that, you know, something could have gone into the baby.
Well, you can tell it was important to you, and that's what I like to hear about any mother. Because when my mom, she says my mother had a very, oh my God, her childhood was so, and you know, I think God blessed her with children, you know, because she had such a hard life growing up, and sometimes she would be in orphanages, and my great grandmother would come and help her out.
Oh, wow.
And when I was reading about, males for us, that's why I say I step aside for a little bit, and I got in touch with my feminine side when I was reading the book, which is not normal for me. I always try to be tough, but I mean sometimes you do get choked up because some people just have to sit there sometimes, and you have to look at the big picture, and you have to see what can I get out of this to make me stronger. So when I read the book, I got a little choked up because it touched me in a sense because I had seen purpose. I'd seen purpose through every step of the way. And males, we don't know what it's like to be a mother. We can't. We're just God didn't make us that way. And it brought me to the point to where some males try to tell women to not go through that process of being a mother, and males have a big way in helping women make a decision. So now that you've made the decision, you've nurtured this child, you've raised her, you've seen her growing, and I honestly believe, this is what I believe. I say humans can try to fix things. But at that particular time, sometimes we sit back and just let the flower grow sometimes and see.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do think you're right, because there's times I was so knee deep in doing that, someone would say, hey, did you notice this? And I'll think, I didn't have time to notice that because we were doing this. So sometimes it is important to settle back and just, enjoy the person, and that's in the very last few pages of the book. I read my one friend who said, just, love her, and grateful for the advice, because there were times when I would just fall back on that, and enjoy her.
And I sat there, and I was like, it was hot. I read this book, I think, and I was supposed to call you on Wednesday, but I was deep into the story, and I'm like, I got to figure out what this is like. I think sometimes people, just as humans, Miss Gianetti, sometimes we forget the essence and the purpose of actual living. And sometimes the purpose of actual living is just leave it in God's hands. And I read and I seen how you said sometimes the doctors, like when it came to the tube issue, and doctors are trying to find ways, they're dibbling with medicines, and they're trying to, I think doctors don't get enough credit sometimes. They're trying their best to find and make people happy. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, they do. They try their very best, and they do listen, and they're compassionate, and they try their very best for each person. And
I was thinking about my own situation, because I'm gonna tell you, they had me on some crazy medications when I was in. Got my little ordeal when I was in Puerto Rico. But I'll never forget, one time me and the doctor, I think it was a Commander Kelly, I can't remember what his name was, but I believe that's what it was. We sat in a room. Now I'm the patient and he's the doctor, and I was starting to get better, and I just go straight up with him. I said, this medication's not working. He looked at me and I said, why don't you try this right there? So do you think that that's what it takes sometimes for the person to sit back and actually talk to the doctor and say, listen, this is what I feel is wrong with my child. Could you try these right here? Did you do that in any state?
Again, we weren't really on medication per se, but what we definitely did is we had to have the talks with the different physicians for their support for the situations we had, if we needed a therapy, if we needed something, if we had ideas to share, or even just, stretching out those immunizations a little bit, to have that talk is very important. But also, you've got to have the physician who has the right ears to hear you, and that's a gift, to listen, to be open-minded, to take the time to, sit down in a chair and talk with you, as opposed to maybe standing with a hand on the doorknob, nodding their head, and you're feeling a touch hurried. You need that time. But once you can establish that relationship, then it's easy at that point, because once they understand you and the child, then it's easy. Then you've formed the groundwork, and then you just build from there.
Excellent. Everybody, you're listening to The Mediator with Brian West and Alicia Sparks. Again, Alicia is out spending Mother's Day with herself. She is a mother herself and with her mom. If you want to donate to the program, The Mediator, go to method8inc.com and feel free to donate, or you can mail them in. Just follow the instructions on the website. We are talking to Michele Gianetti. Again, that is method8inc.com, method the number 8. She's talking about her book, I Believe in You, a mother and daughter story on a special journey. We are down to the last 10 minutes of the show, Michele. You came on Mother's Day, and I really enjoyed. I'm enjoying this topic. Like I said, I was inspired by your book. Please forgive me for telling you I cried. I'm so sorry. I know men are supposed to cry.
No, that's okay.
I soften up sometimes. I'm sorry, but I felt what you were going through. You know, I thought it was I think I just had a moment where I'm sitting there and I'm seeing. I think God just kind of touched me when I was reading the story, because you seem like I'm looking at the pictures of you and your family, and you got some pictures of yourself in the book, and your family's all at this table and things like that. How did your family? How did they kind of impact the growth of your child?
I think by being that cushion of support, just a safe haven. Just. They would listen, they would understand, and they would just be with us and Elizabeth. Just knowing they're there. You didn't have to worry. You didn't have to, hope you were getting it right. You could just be there. And just the love, just unconditional love is a really great thing.
What did they do for you on Mother's Day today? What do you got planned?
Oh, my troops and I, well, this morning we woke up and we all decided, I guess, cake was the choice for breakfast today. So we had my Mother's Day cake, yes. We had cake and had cards and a sign this morning, and they put the signs up we do for birthdays and everything, so we always have signs up. So they did that, had a really great start, and I told them that's all I really wanted, right? I mean, just that.
Isn't that magical?
Yep. It really was, and so everybody had a sugar rush going by about 7:30 in the morning. But and then we're going to just get some dinner tonight, and that's about it. Yeah, just a really nice day.
My mom got upset with me because for a minute there I was going to skip out on Mother's Day, but I went and got her a plant. I got her a card. I think I'm going to take her out to eat after the show here. So so that Mother's Day is special. I think I think. It's a good holiday, especially for the ones who you there, you're raised, I'm sure your kids appreciate you, right?
Yeah, they do, and I know that, and I love them. I mean, pure and simple. The cards are so sweet and stuff. And even before I came down the steps, Elizabeth gave me just a big hug, and she said, "So you're going to talk about me?" I said, "Yes, I am."
Well, she's a hero, man. I could actually see her talking to kids who have dyspraxia and telling them what she has to go through, and she's a hero, and I don't think she probably knows it. She doesn't know her ability, as a child. That's what I wanted to ask you too. Now, you've taken on a responsibility. You've done it, and you're raising her, and you've seen her to adulthood. What advice would you give a lot of mothers out there in the 21st century?
In general?
Yeah, I mean, you're a role model now, Michele. I know you may not think so, but you're a success story. To me, that's what success is. You're watching. You saw the battle, and you took it on, and you didn't give up. You inspired her. I mean, just look at the title. You wrote a book. I mean, it says, "I Believe in You." It's inspirational. It talks, and that's not ordinary. That's an extraordinary person. So what advice would you give to the mothers out there, Michele?
Probably to just, really listen to your kids, to just treasure them, every little thing that you can, the little successes, to make time for each one, and to like for Emily, when Emily was our oldest, she was growing up, we made sure to acknowledge all the things that Em did, as well as all the little things Elizabeth did. And, just kind of creates a nice balance. You don't ever want to shortchange one child's significance because you're working so hard for the special needs child. And just, really just love them and, grow with them. I think that's the big thing, because as much as it's wonderful to have those little children, you have to grow with them because they're going to grow without you.
Yeah.
And you just, you're either going to watch them go or you're going to be side next to them, rocking with them. And I think that's a big thing for a person like me.
Yeah.
To remind myself of, for that. And, those are about it, and just be very thankful.
I hope I don't lose no manly points for shedding some tears, but but I do want to ask you one. Now, people, I was raised Christian, so there's I think women in the 21st century have a lot of confusion when it comes to motherhood, and I've seen it myself growing up, and men are trying to make. Women have a powerful position in this new environment where they're able to make decisions. They're able to, there was this time and frame where they weren't be able to talk in public. They weren't be able to do a lot of things. So now that they have a lot of power in the 21st century where they can have children, they can decide or not. I've seen where mothers can be redeemed. I've seen redemption stories. So when you see women making critical decisions like that, and you had to make that choice, and you I guess what I'm saying is, for the women out there who've made bad decisions and they don't feel like, I've seen mothers, I'm sure you watch the news sometimes where these mothers, they just give up. They don't have that support system. So what are you doing in that situation, since you're an author? What advice, since you have the platform right now, would you give to those women who want to give up?
Oh, wow. I'd honestly say the biggest thing you have to do is to forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made. I mean, we all have made mistakes. I've made countless ones. And, you can devote your mind to those, or you can forgive yourself and realize maybe that happened at a reason because there's a lesson in it.
Yeah.
Maybe it happened when it should have happened, and you learn from it, and you have to move on. But to give up, it would be, just such a shame, because there are gifts in each person.
Yeah.
And you have to just trust that they're in there, and, forgive yourself. And I know I have had several times in our journey where I've actually had to just stop and just say, okay, that was totally wrong, and, I can't look back and say it, because I can't take it back.
Yeah, you can't take it back.
Right, and just to kind of look for your gifts, and, and give yourself a pat on the back for having those gifts, and maybe then begin to use them.
Now, we have about 3 minutes left in the show. I want to ask you real quick. You were raised Catholic. What role did your church help you out a lot in the process?
You know what? I think, to be honest with you, we didn't really turn to the church for that.
Oh, wow.
At the time. We just weren't really involved, because it was hard with Elizabeth and her disorders to be in, say, a church group or a church function.
Yeah.
Because how she was. But we would, go to church, and everybody was very supportive of her in Mass and things of that nature. So we did use that as a good core for us. But involvement had to take a back seat, because it just wasn't an option at the early years.
Okay, we're down to the last 2 minutes. I want to give people where they can support you. I got some websites here. I'll let you take the platform. Where can people support you? Where can they buy your book?
Well, you can buy my book at Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com, or on my website, which is www.michelegianetti.com. And you can also read my blog at that site as well.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much, Michele. We had a nice Mother's Day discussion. I wish Sparks would have been here to be able to get some of the feminine side to you. You brought some tears out of me.
You shared a little feminine side, so that's okay.
God, I can't believe it. I'm so militant minded, but I got softened up today, Michele. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, for spending an hour with me on Mother's Day.
You're welcome.
I'm going to be definitely praying for your family. I know Elizabeth's doing such a great job. She's growing. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the Mediator. Now, one last thing I want to say: has this made you a better mom?
I think it's a nice way. Yeah, it does. It settles in my head a lot of different things. It gives you a good review, and it makes you, realize you have all the determination, and it just kind of keeps you going forward.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Mediator with Brian West. Everybody have a good week. Talk to you later.
A Cumulus station.
Thank you.
Sponsored by the Ridgewood at Shenango Valley, a premier senior living residence.